Hello and welcome to the Action Network UFC betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down a 14 fight card for UFC 320. We're going to give you our best bets, favorite underdogs, top props, and more. And if you'd like to tell some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to look for the quick slip link both in the podcast and video description or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. 14 fight card from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. 8 prelims at 6 p.m. Eastern, a 5-fight main card at 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 title bouts, including the main event, the light heavyweight title bout, and rematch between Magomed Ankalaev and Alex Pereira. Ankalaev around minus 250, Pereira around plus 215. This fight is roughly minus 120, I believe, to end inside the distance, minus 140. The first fight, the odds in the first fight, Ankalaev was a plus 110 underdog. I believe you and I both bet him around even money in that matchup, Billy. That first fight, though, also minus 200 to end inside the distance. As I said, this one is minus 140. What I found most interesting, though, even though the odds for this fight are likelier to go to a decision than the first matchup, Ankalaev's knockout odds dropped from plus 360 to plus 290. His submission odds went up from plus 950 to plus 1500, but his inside the distance line actually dropped from plus 225 to plus 185. So even though, even though this fight is considered less likely by the odds makers to go to a decision than the first fight, Ankalaev's inside the distance odds are actually 40 cents shorter. Now, there was some rumors about Poatan potentially retiring. He had a cryptic tweet, which he then said was a hack, which he then has later denied and said was actually him tweeting. So some weird stuff around Poatan, maybe, looking at the end of his combat sports career, he is, but he's the bigger man, 1 inch taller, 4 inch reach advantage. And the first fight was very close. It was on a razor's edge. Frankly, neither guy really felt like they did everything that they could in order to win the fight. I think the most important aspect of it in hindsight, Ankalaev 0 for 12 on takedown attempts. They get 5 minutes and 42 seconds of control time up against the cage, but 0 for 12 on takedown attempts. The striking numbers relatively close. Ankalaev actually outlanded him, though, 3-1 on head strikes, 36-11 in terms of head strikes. And I think that optics for the judges just played much more favorably than all of the low kicks that Poatan landed on him. We're on opposite sides of this fight, though. I'm actually going to take the suspiciously low inside the distance line and go with the market movement here with the younger champion going against an older competitor who he previously faced. I think the finishing chance just does sort of increase, especially if Poatan is looking at potential retirement. But I still think Poatan's chin is a potential issue. We've seen him wobbled in multiple fights, got wobbled in the fight against Khalil Rountree Jr. I think Ankalaev has a good chance to finish him if he's going to fight a little bit more aggressive, if both of them are going to fight a little bit more aggressive on Saturday. So Ankalaev inside the distance, I make that, I want to say around plus 150, 144, you can get plus 175. And then also in the first fight, I said Ankalaev live bet after round 1, potential same game parlay, Ankalaev in the over. I still think the longer the fight goes, the better for him on minute winning. Poatan may win the first round, but he does tend to take 5 to 7 to 10 minutes off in these 25-minute fights in order to reset himself and make sure that he has power for the 5th round. So even if Poatan wins earlier, if he wins one of the first 2 rounds, I'll probably look to jump in on Ankalaev at a live number that is hopefully better than his pre-fight price, north of 2-1. You're going with the underdog, though, Alex Pereira. You're going to have a pre-fight ticket. Is there going to be a point, an inflection point, where you're looking to fire live on Ankalaev here?
Yes, but only because I'm not all that confident in my take. So if I can get plus money on both sides, I'll be very happy to just lock in a profit and not worry about it. I agree with most of your analysis. I just think the market is overcorrected both on the odds that this is another slow-paced fight and on the odds that Ankalaev wins. It was a close fight. It was the 4th title fight in like 11 and a half months for Pereira coming into that one. He had kind of came out and said that he was injured, wasn't really at full strength, didn't necessarily want to be fighting that fast. And I think the whole tweet was more about negotiating for pay from the UFC than it was actually retiring because, he said something about they wouldn't make the fights he wanted or wouldn't give him what he wanted. I don't remember the exact phrasing. So, with all of that said, now he's had 6 months off. He should be at full strength. He didn't throw a lot of head strikes. He came out like many months after and casually mentioned that he had a broken hand coming into that fight, which I think if you go back and look at it makes a lot of sense because he wasn't throwing hard to the head. Should be 100%. I think Ankalaev is a deserving favorite given the youth, given the multifaceted skills he brings, but it shouldn't be plus 220 or plus 215 on Pereira. So I'm with you on that. I like any of the inside the distance or unders. I think everyone's overcorrected on that. Pereira's not going to lose another title fight where he sits back and hopes to get a close decision. He's just not going to do that. He's going to push it at some point. We've seen him do that in, most of his fights. Anytime he has kind of a slower, boring fight, he comes out like crazy in the next one. So that might get him finished. It might get him taken down and beat up on the ground. But I do think the unders are also in play. And to your point, if he starts strong and, lands really well in the first round and I can get plus 150 on the other side, I will be thrilled to just make some money no matter who wins.
Yeah, I have to feel like the price adjustment on the unders here, considering it was minus 250 or whatever it was in the first fight, minus 200. Now it's minus 140. That's a nice little discount considering the relative danger that both of these guys pose, and
Mhm.
also I think Poetan's, as you said, his aggression, which may force a finish on either side of the fight. Either
Right.
way, speaking of aggressive fighters who tend to force a finish, our fight of the night. Well, actually, let's pause because we do have another title bout. I apologize. I was going to get to the other light heavyweight bout on the card. We'll get to there in 1 second, but I forgot about the co-main event between Merab Dvalishvili and Corey Sandhagen for the bantamweight title. I like this fight to end inside the distance as well at around plus 240. Merab showing a little bit more finishing aggression in his recent matchups. I do still think, though, his chin remains a potential concern. He has gotten wobbled and nearly finished very badly in the past. But in terms of the stylistic matchup, it's so difficult to bet against Merab. My model shows value on Corey Sandhagen here. I can't pull the trigger. He's 5 inches taller, has a 2 inch reach advantage, but he's going to get wrestled for the entirety of this fight. So where does he get offense off aside from just catching Merab with one big punch or with a big knee? Merab averages 9.4 takedowns per 5 minutes at distance, which is insane. He's shot 272 takedowns in 15 UFC fights. It seems like just an impossible number to achieve 272 takedowns in 15 fights. Unbelievable. Now, Corey only defends takedowns at 63%. He is a pretty good scrambler, though. I think he's a
Mhm.
better BJJ practitioner than Sean O'Malley, for instance. So, head to head, I think he'll do better defending the grappling potentially than O'Malley did in the last fight. But I'm not sure where he's going to be able to create space and land offense of his own. Merab is just so relentless. Again, unless Corey catches Merab with something coming in, probably a knee, I'd say is his best chance of finding something big. I like Merab to wash him out. Merab live anytime in this fight, Merab live in any of his fights after round one, after round two. If he manages to drop a round, jump in on Merab live because he'll probably win every single minute for the remainder of the fight unless he gets finished. But this fight to end inside the distance, I projected it around plus 215. I like that at plus 240. Not hugely confident takes for me on either the Ankalaev inside the distance or this fight to end inside the distance, but do want to give out picks for these fights, and those are the bets showing potential value. Billy Oval full fight breakdown for this one up on actionnetwork.com. You're going with Merab on the point spread minus 5.5 at minus 120. Tell me why you landed on that bet and any other ways you consider betting this fight.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about the 5.5 point spreads are comparatively much easier to cover than the 3.5 because you don't have to be perfect. I looked it up. Marab actually would not have covered this in either of his title fight decision wins,
Mm.
but he very much should have. It felt like judges were just giving his opponent like close rounds at the end when the fight was already decided. Both fights had Marab win one round or win 4-1 on one judge's scorecard and 3-2 on the other. So he was +5, didn't cover 5.5. But he very much should have if you go back and watch, like, especially the first O'Malley fight. I don't see how you give Sean 2 rounds there. Anyway, Sandhagen is just not a deserving title contender here. He comes in on a one fight winning streak, and that fight was a weird knee injury by Davison Figueiredo, where Sandhagen Was looking for leg locks, didn't really have like an actual leg lock, but just the weird scramble caused Davy Figs knee to pop. And before that, he got dominated by Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar landed 5 takedowns on Sandhagen. Merab easily out wrestled Umar in that fight. To your question about like where the offense comes from Sandhagen, I actually think it's leg entanglements and like weird jujitsu stuff off of his back is probably the likeliest, but that's such a thin path against Marab, especially if you don't get it in the first round when you're fresh and not as slippery and all that. I just don't see Sandhagen getting much going. Nobody ever hits Marab. He attempts more than one takedown per minute in his UFC career. To piggyback off your stat, I did it on a per minute basis, which is crazy because he lands so many of them that like much of the time they're spent on the ground, and he still manages to attempt more than one per minute. Just absurd. UFC record holder for the most takedowns. He's got a 7 takedown lead over George St. Pierre on 7 less fights, and counting. So that's probably a record we don't see ever challenged unless kids start fighting in the UFC when they're like 12 in a junior division, is the only way I could see anything changing that. So all about Merab -5.5. As you pointed out, Merab live at any point in any fight ever. If you get a better price, sure. Like that's if it's gonna happen, by all means, there's nothing wrong with that.
Friday the night light heavyweight bout between Yuri Prochazka and Khalil Roundtree Jr. We're on opposite side. No, we're actually not on opposite sides. I expected to be on opposite sides of this one. Normally, you're the guy betting Yuri. You actually have a total in this fight, which I don't see from you as frequently, but two
I
older guys.
changed that bet. Sorry to
Oh, you
interrupt,
did.
but I came off the total. Yeah, you'll have to check the sheet again.
Okay.
Changed it at the last minute.
We actually, yeah, I'm realizing we are aligned on this fight, which is fairly surprising to me because I feel like you are normally the Yuri Prochazka guy. So I'm going to turn this one over to you and let you give the breakdown in terms of why you essentially flip sides, in my opinion, of where I expected you to be.
Yeah, so what I noticed in this fight is to an extent both guys are like weak where the other person's offense is the best. And what I mean by that is Roundtree has the traditional Muay Thai style where he kind of likes to take turns. He likes to counter strike, but you do your couple punches, then he's going to throw a couple back at you. Hopefully he lands harder. We reset, we do it again. Yuri is just all over the place and throwing weird stuff and darting around. He's not going to fall into that rhythm with anyone. But Yuri also is pretty bad against southpaws. Like he beat Jamal Hill, but took way more damage than he should have. Those left-handed counters are just really, really perfect to land on Yuri. The other thing is Pereira kind of beat him up inside in the clinch, and Jamal even got some dirty boxing in there. The shorter, stockier frame of Roundtree, as well as his speed, if they're fighting this at close range, Roundtree is going to destroy him. I'm not sure that he'll be able to make it like a close clinch slash dirty boxing fight, but it's there. And I just really struggle. Yuri, his defense was better against Jamal Hill in that he started to move his head, but he still didn't bring his hands up in front of his face or really move his feet out of the way. And Roundtree, as the southpaw, has really good southpaw footwork. He's going to win that front foot battle. He's going to be flanking you off at an angle. And Yuri just doesn't seem to have any interest in addressing that. Like, it's not that he can't, he just doesn't care. The ace in the hole I see for Yuri, though, is if he gets a takedown, I think it's going to be a big thing for him. Roundtree has officially lost every fight in which he's given up a takedown in the UFC. He has one no contest that he actually won, but was taken down. But, official record, he's lost every time he's been taken down. And then they matched him up with a bunch of strikers in a row because he's a lot of fun to watch strike, and they didn't want that to happen. Yuri's gotten takedowns in 3 of his 7 UFC fights and a submission in one of the others against Glover. Plus 250 to land a single takedown is Yuri Prohaska. So my logic here, Khalil Roundtree at plus 175, Yuri over a half takedown at plus 250. You probably aren't going to win both of those bets, but you have a very good shot of winning one or the other. You could also make it Khalil by KO, which is your angle on here. Would be fine with that as well. But yeah, I think if you split those two bets, you're very, very likely to come out with some profit. Probably not winning both of them, but enough that you'll cover yourself one way or the other.
Yeah, I like that angle. I think Yuri probably needs to grapple in order to cover his price tag. He's probably not going to cover minus 2XX in a straight kickboxing match
Mhm.
against the guy who's a more technical kickboxer. Neither guy really defends strikes well. 49% for Roundtree, but just 43% for Yuri. As you said, he keeps the hands low, doesn't really move his head a ton, using it a little bit more now, but very hittable
Mhm.
defensively. Another big thing I think here too, Yuri does not check leg kicks, and Khalil is going to hammer those and limit his movement as well, like Rakic did. So in general, Yuri is just a very popular fighter. He's, very mystical. He's very fun to root for. He's very weird. But because of that, he has a big fan base, and people are picking him to win this fight around 65 to 70% of the time compared to implied odds nearer to 60%, or I guess for Roundtree, it's closer to 40% or 35% implied. So it's right in line essentially with
Yeah.
expectations, but in general, Yuri tends to be over selected, I find, in my public sample. So I make Khalil around plus 140 here, and I make his knockout odds roughly 3-1. So Khalil to plus 150, and then his KO prop down to plus 325. Football season's here, folks, and we've got some huge improvements and updates coming to the award-winning Action Network app, which we're very excited to discuss in the weeks ahead. But to get the most out of the app, you'll still need to be an Action Pro subscriber, and it's only with Action Pro that you get real-time pick alerts from me and the entire Action Network team of experts. Plus, you can access pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team, plus a ton of other benefits, including right now, Action Network listeners can save $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20 for $20 off the annual subscription. That's actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20 for $20 off the annual price of Action Pro. We're going to move on to our favorite underdog section, and we've got some nice flow here in our final three sections because some of these fights are going to cover both underdogs and props, and then one of the prop fights is going to cover our best bet as well. I've got one underdog that I like. Billy has three, but we are aligned on one consensus dog this week, and that's Ramiz Brahimaj against Austin Vanderford. Brahimaj around plus 260 has pulled off three upsets, I believe, all by first round finish, all definitely by finish. I can't recall if they were all in the first round. He's a really nasty guillotine. He has some decent power. I think he's capable of hurting Austin Vanderford, who got finished by Gegard Mousasi. It was a really weird finish because he got punched and went down, but also like seemingly tore his ACL at the same time. Like his knee blew out as he was getting punched. So it was kind of a weird finish. But I do think Vanderford is gettable in terms of his shin. And I do think if he's going to be looking for takedowns here, which he is a proactive grappler, if he's going to be looking for takedowns here, I think he could potentially shoot himself right into a guillotine for Brahimaj. So Brahimaj to win in round one at plus 700. And then on the money line as well, I make him around plus 195. I would take him to 2-1 pre-fight. You could live bet Vanderford probably after the first round. Brahimaj doesn't have the best gas tank, but I do think he has a good chance of winning the first round. Billy, we're aligned here, as I said, on Brahimaj. He's as high as plus 260 to plus 240 in the betting market. Where do you like him down to? And do you have any other prop leans for this fight?
Yeah, I can't believe the line is this wide on Brahimaj. He missed like 2 years with a really bad neck injury, then looked pretty bad in his first fight back. But that's exactly what we expect to happen when you weren't training for an extended period. You know, your body's not 100%. And then since that first fight back, he's picked up two first round stoppages. Um, Austin Vanderford needs to wrestle in this and every matchup, and Brahimaj is a world IBJJF world no-gi champion at one point. So like you don't want to wrestle him, as you pointed out, the guillotine. Even if he does get a takedown and doesn't get guillotined, I'm not so sure that Vanderford wins those exchanges on the mat. Um, I also have my concerns with Brahimaj's cardio a little bit, but we haven't seen him be extended since we've known he's healthy, if that makes sense. Like that's a weird way to phrase that, but I think people can follow what I'm saying there. I'd probably play him to like plus 150, plus probably even a little bit lower than that if, that was really what the line was. It's not going to come up. Anything we're going to see on Brahim, I would take this weekend. I'm just really surprised that the one win from Austin Vanderford is enough to make him this big of a favorite. The one UFC win.
Hopefully he gets the win, and hopefully he gets it inside the distance because he is one of the best Bronx accents you will ever hear. Need to get Ramiz
Yes.
Brahimaj on the mic to hear him talking and injecting that accent into the arena. Couple more underdogs that you like. I have prop thoughts or prop plays on both of these fights. The first being Abus Magomedov against Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer continuing to cash minus 900 tickets to be cringy on the microphone the week of his fights. Just unbelievable walk every single time out. Tough guy to root for, but I will be rooting for him this weekend. Minus 110 to win inside the distance. I projected that closer to minus 125. His KO prop is plus 143. I make that closer to plus 102. If you're betting Pyfer, I would bet his finish props. if you're betting a money line side of this matchup, I would go with the underdog, which Billy is. So tell me why you like Abus, and tell me if you are looking to hedge out on Pfeiffer potentially after round one.
Yeah, I mean, Pfeiffer is a guy who the majority of his win condition is hurting you early. Even if he doesn't get you out of there, he still needs to land that. Abus Magomedov's last two wins are against Michel Pereira and Bruno Ferreira, both guys with crazy power who just blitz right away. He survived both of those, no problem, was able to finish Bruno Ferreira on the ground. That's aged extremely well because Ferreira's tapped out a couple people since then. The Pereira win has not aged as well. Pereira's on a little bit of a slump. But still, that's like that same archetype of fighter that Joe Pyfer is, where they're going to throw a lot at you early. Pyfer, I think, a little bit better cardio than those guys because he doesn't throw as much. He throws as hard, he doesn't throw as much volume. But Abus can grapple, right? Like if he gets a takedown here, he submitted Bruno Ferreira, who's a scary judo black belt. I know Pyfer can grapple a little bit himself, but I think Magomedov has the advantage there, has the advantage probably in cardio. Piper didn't look great down the stretch against Kelvin Gastelum. He looked okay, but like I would have liked to see him do more against a much smaller fighter in Gastelum. And Magomedov again has won these fights against big, strong guys. We all have that memory of him getting knocked out by Sean Strickland because Sean Strickland doesn't knock anyone out. Since then, though, he's been fine, hasn't been hurt. I'm willing to just write that off as a fluke at this point, especially when we're getting better than 2-1 odds.
Another underdog that you like this weekend potentially, Jakub Wicklacz going up against Patchy Mix. Wicklacz, the former KSW bantamweight champion. Patchy lost his UFC debut as a favorite against Mario Batista. I believe we were both on Batista in that fight. His timing just really looked off. And he is a grappling oriented fighter. From what I understand, Wicklacz comes from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu base. So
Mhm.
if this is going to be a fight where you have a wrestler going against a BJJ practitioner, potentially Wicklacz could neutralize the grappling and make it a more competitive striking matchup. I actually make Patchy by decision around plus 120 here. You can get him as high as plus 175. I think most people, if Patchy wins the fight, expecting him to win via submission because he does tend to finish his fights. And when he's in decisions, they tend to be a little bit closer or more split. But Patchy decision plus 175. I'm just expecting him to land top time and for Wicklacz to do enough on the bottom to survive without getting submitted. But you like his chances of actually pulling the upset this weekend. So again, what is your price target for Wicklacz? Where do you like him down to, and what did you see on the tape?
Yeah, I think probably about 2-1 to plus 200. A little bit, I'd want a little bit better than that, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there's a couple things here. The first is this is to a degree like a litmus test of KSW versus other promotions that we've signed fighters from. And the KSW guys have surprised, like we think of that as a lower league than something like Bellator or PFL. I think not we as in you and I, but we as
Sure,
in
sure,
the
sure.
MMA community broadly, and that hasn't been the case. Like their guys have been fine coming over, where the Bellator and PFL, and even to an extent Risen or Ryzen, we're not getting into that one again. Fighters have not done as well. So maybe being the KSW champ is as relevant as being a Bellator champ as Patchy Mix was.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I see a little bit of the like Bo Nickel, Paul Craig dynamic here, where Patchy's not going to want to get the takedowns. They're both going to be a little bit cautious there. And if you told me ahead of time this was just a kickboxing match, I'd take most people over most UFC fighters over Patchy Mix. He just looks so bad striking in his debut. Also relevant, he didn't even try to take Bautista down, or he attempted one takedown on Bautista while getting outstruck, which was just weird. Like he just wasn't pulling the trigger. Maybe it was octagon jitters. I would not bet against him, if this price was tighter. But at plus 260 on Wicklacz, I'm not sure how you don't take that. There's just so many question marks around both guys. It's a very wide range of outcomes fight, in my opinion. But, if we're flipping a coin and one side pays out plus 260, it's a pretty clear bet.
Couple fights exclusively from a prop perspective we'll touch on, and then we'll transition to our best bets for this weekend's card. Macy Chasson against Yana Santos in the women's bantamweight division. Chasson, 5 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage, 2 years younger. Santos actually has the better striking stats at distance, outlanding opponents by 1.7 strikes per 5 minutes or per minute at distance, 0.3 for Chasson. Macy actually has the top time upside here, even though she's the taller and longer fighter. She attempts roughly one takedown per minute At distance, Santos defending takedowns at just 46% or 54% for her career. So I think Macy gets top time. I think the striking is otherwise competitive. Macy decision, I make minus 105. You can get as high as plus 160. I also make her money line around minus 200 versus minus 190, but I would much rather have the decision prop. Any bets for you on Chasson against Santos, Billy?
You cannot bet on this, but if you could, I would be betting on this fight to be remade as a catchweight at some point between now and when the fight actually happens. Neither, I don't like to rag on the female bantamweights for this because many of them wanted to be featherweights, but the
Yeah,
UFC just told them we're not doing that. You have to cut a weight class, which is unfair, especially when you're a 5'11" woman like Macy is. That sucks. I don't know how she makes 135, but the odds of both of them making 135, in about an hour from when we're recording this is pretty low.
that was so good. That got an actual like laugh out of me. Beautifully done. One final fight that you like from a prop perspective: Punahale Soriano against Nikolai Veretennikov. I have not been impressed at all by Veretennikov in the UFC.
Yep.
I bet Vanderford against him. I show value on Soriano KO. I make it plus 140, or I make it plus 118. You can get as high as plus 140. Not super duper interested in playing it, but it is the one value bet that potentially popped up for this fight. How are you betting this matchup?
Yeah, we will see what the lines are. I want to be in on Punahele Soriano's takedowns. I'm not sure what kind of price we'll get. Those aren't up at the time of recording. Three of the four opponents that Veretennikov has fought between the Contender Series and UFC proper have taken him down multiple times. That includes Michael Morales on the Contender Series, who came to the UFC and became a striker. That includes Francisco Prado, also mostly a striker and like barely a welterweight, like a guy who should be smaller but was forced up because he can't make 55. He took him down three times. Soriano doesn't often grapple in his fights, but when he does, he commits to it. He got five takedowns of Miguel Baeza, three takedowns on the Contender Series way back in 2019. I think he's going to be wise enough to realize that that's just the clearer edge in this matchup, and he should take it. I'm looking for plus money if it's a 1.5 takedown prop. I want the over on that at plus money. If it's just set at 0.5, I think I'd play that down to like minus 150. I would not be shocked though if they set the over 0.5 at even or better. Just because if you look at the course of his career, Soriano doesn't get that many takedowns, but in select matchups he does. So keep an eye on that. I will tweet it out or probably put it in the Action Network Discord when I make that bet. So jump in there on the fight section if you want to get alerted, at least if I notice that fight before anyone else does, or that prop, I should say.
Puna was a Hawaiian high school state wrestling champion and also high school state judo champion and went on to wrestle at a Division III college. So he does come from a wrestling base. Did see Veretennikov get taken down relatively easily by Vanderford. I think I definitely like that prop as well as provided the price tag, of course.
Right.
If you're on Twitter, we have a great new feature. If you see a bet from any of your favorite action experts or anyone on gambling Twitter, you can get a new. You can now tag at Playbook and tell our bot to build you a bet slip at a book of your choice. It will build it out for you with a quick slip link that opens right up to your sports book. So keep an eye out for a new tool at Playbook on Twitter, and we can both at Daniel Willie Cat Santos this weekend to Playbook because that is my best bet. It is, I believe, one of your best bets as well. You also have a prop that you like on this fight, but Daniel Santos against Ju Sang Yu, Zombie Jr. Ju Sang Yu, one UFC win over Jeka Sergi, does absolutely nothing for me. It's essentially a Dana White Contender Series victory. I think both of these guys are going to be extremely hittable. You absorbing 49% of strikes from Sergi is a pretty bad look. Santos has absorbed 49% of strikes from his opponents throughout his career, but he is super aggressive, very much on the gas, especially when he's behind in the fight. You is the slightly bigger man, 4-inch reach advantage. He's very good boxing, but I prefer Santos's hardware coming forward. I just think he's probably the more explosive athlete and the more durable athlete of the two. Make Willie Cat about minus 203 in this matchup. Market has him at minus 140. I like him up to around minus 180. I should also mention Jew is a 31-year-old. He's not some like 25-year-old hot prospect from TKZ's gym, which just has me less concerned, that there's some projectable upside that I'm missing with this guy. I think he's going to be a fun fighter. I don't think he is necessarily at Daniel Santos's level. You like a finish in this fight. You like somebody to finish this fight, but you also like Daniel Santos on the money line as well. I guess provided it goes to a decision, I think we both view him as the more likely minute winner
Mhm.
potentially in this matchup. So how did you break this one down, and what bets do you have?
Yeah, so I got to this one a little bit late, and I actually spent most of the week thinking that Ju Sang Yu was Jiu-Jitsu, but that is a different fighter,
Uh,
also named Yu, which is why I ended up changing my best bet to Daniel Santos because he has all of the grappling upside here. I really like his takedowns. He'll shoot for takedowns. He'll hit little trips. He'll hit little throws. He's not, he's not Merab where he's going to force the issue at the expense of his own personal safety. But if they're there, he'll take them, and they will be there against Zombie Jr. because he just walks forward, throwing punches and getting hit. That's it's kind of like I could see this being a coin flip striking fight where both guys could put each other out, both guys could land big shots, but then one fighter has all of the grappling upside should it go there. So that gives him a big edge. As to your point, they're both hittable. They both hit hard. That's kind of the extent of the under 2.5 bet at plus money for me. I'm splitting that between Santos and the under 2.5 just to kind of cover my bases. I'm not entirely confident that if it ends early, it will be Santos. I am confident that if it goes to a decision, it will be Santos. So like that way we're covered a little bit. Other thing I want to point out, Daniel Santos is apparently just like the Korean fighters' number one op at this point, much like Jalen Turner used to be with New Zealand. His last fight was against Jung Young Lee, beat him by decision, was scheduled to fight Doo Ho Choi. That fight got rebooked because Doo Ho Choi hurt his knee. And then they brought in Ju Sang Yu. I don't know why. I don't know what problem Daniel Santos has with the people of South Korea, but that is how they're doing the matchmaking now. I think there's like one or two left around this weight class, counting Doo Ho Choi, that they can put him with before they let him do something else. I would be very surprised if he didn't fight another South Korean after this, win or lose, in much the same way that we made Jalen Turner fight every Australian or New Zealand fighter before he was allowed to do anything else. The UFC just loves doing that sometimes.
yeah, unfortunately, Su Young Yu is going to have to move up a division if we want him to face Daniel Santos. So you
Daniel Santos, former bantamweight, though. I mean, we could meet in
okay?
the middle. We could catch weight it. We got enough South Koreans for him to work through before we let him do anything
Yeah,
else.
if he beats Ju Sang Yu, I need to see the Su Young Yu matchmaking at some point. Su Young Yu coming in, yeah, he's got a 3 fight winning streak. We can make that happen. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The additional fights we did not get to in the preview: Veronica Hardy against Brogan Walker, Chris
Sure.
Gutierrez against Farid Basharat, Edmund Shabazian against Andre Muniz, Atiba Gautier against Tristan Vines, and Josh Emmett against Yusuf Zalal. Emmett Zalal, the most interesting fight of those, actually
Mhm.
the least number of betting options I saw in terms of the odds market. So anything for you? I want to talk about the Emmett Zalal fight briefly, and then we'll talk about any other betting thoughts we have. Anything for you on Emmett against Zalal, Billy?
You could make a case that Emmett either by knockout or even like the finish only money line because the law's been pretty safe lately. Josh Emmett's 40 something years old, power's last thing to go, cardio usually the first thing to go. If it extends, it's probably not good for him. Not betting it myself, that's the one way I would. Like if I win a bunch of early bets and have some extra money in the account, maybe I'll sprinkle something like that, but not super interested.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird matchup for Zalal because Edmund or Emmett is a wrestler. Zalal has been winning his fights through proactively grappling of late. Emmett definitely has the power advantage. Zalal is quicker. So it's kind of a fun fight. It does seem like not the best stylistic matchup for Zalal on paper.
Hmm.
Because I'm not sure if he's landing takedowns. And if he's not landing takedowns, what does that fight look like? He's landing a little bit more volume, but every time Emmett lands, it's shattering the cage. So yeah, very interesting dynamic between those two. I'm still very high on Zalal. I've bet him to finish every fight since he came back to the UFC. He's definitely on quite a number of supplements as well. So if he can take down Emmett and submit him, I think it goes a long way towards showing where his current level is at. Still been the most competitive fight with Ilia Topuria to date as well. Edmund Shabazian against Andre Muniz. I projected Edmund by decision at around plus 650 or plus 455. You can get as high as plus 650. I think somebody very likely finishes that fight, but Edmund is the clear better minute winner in that matchup, the much better striker. Muniz, if he wins the fight, I would say it's likely to be via submission or just Edmund gassing out and tiring out on bottom like he typically does. Do you have any thoughts on Shabazian against Muniz, Billy?
Yeah, I just like what we saw from Shabazian with actually winning a decision against Andre Petroski, and theoretically a similar matchup. Before that, the book on him was always he's going to win very quickly or not at all. I think he's grown and matured a little bit. Muniz should probably be on a four-fight losing streak. He has a split decision in there. That's the only thing that broke it up. I just think he has not translated the jiu-jitsu well enough over to MMA. Really like Shabazian for DFS. And Puna Soriano are my two like somewhat confident plays over there. So that will be my exposure. I think Shabazian probably gets a finish here, but like the worst case scenario for him is still a pretty good fantasy day in terms of landing a takedown or two, doing a bunch of damage on the feet. So one of my favorite plays from that regards.
I'll have to take a look at his point spread odds. I feel like that could be a good way to play him. I don't really see Andre winning a round. I think Andre finishes the fight or loses 30-27
Yeah.
when it's finished. So, yeah, Shabazian point spread could be a good way to go there. The last potential bet that I have, Farid Basharat, about minus 150 to win by decision. I projected that closer to minus 200 against Chris Gutierrez. We've just seen Gutierrez grappled. I think Farid can stay competitive enough on the feet to mix in the takedowns and potentially win via top time. So Basharat against Gutierrez. I know the Basharat brothers have not been overly impressive, even though they do look super talented. They're just not able to put away opponents seemingly, which leaves their margins in fights very thin. We've already seen Javid, I believe, lose a close decision as a big favorite. So, what are your thoughts on Farid Basharat, potentially the better of the Basharat bros this weekend?
I would say almost certainly the better of the Basharat brothers. Just hasn't fought in like a year, so we've kind of forgotten about him. You set me up perfectly, though. You mentioned the point spread in the previous fight, and also Farid likely to take this to a close decision. DraftKings has the Gutierrez point spread. The default one is now plus 5.5 at slight favorite odds, and then you can go to the alternate point spread, get plus 3.5 at plus 120. I actually think the 5.5, despite it being a three-round fight, actually matters here a little bit because Farid has some of those rounds where he might land a takedown or two, but Gutierrez is going to land more strikes. That makes it a little bit hard to judge. Plus 5.5, only minus 125. You basically just need to convince two judges you won a round to cover that in a three-round fight, which shouldn't be that hard. If you want to get a little bit greedy, Gutierrez plus 3.5, which you need to lose 29-28, is plus 120. I like the 5.5 better. I like both of those to an extent, though. Lines up perfectly with what you're saying. He just doesn't he being Farid in this case, just doesn't put people away at a high enough clip that you feel confident he's going to cover point spreads, especially big ones.
Yeah, never 10-8 round really either, just because there's not enough
Right.
power. So yeah, very thin margins for the Basharat Bros. I do like him by decision, but laying juice isn't particularly exciting either. So we'll find if there's a potential parlay angle or another way we might go about playing that one. But that'll do it for a UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. And remember, if you'd like to instantly tell some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip links both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.